The grand hall of the celestial palace shimmered with bioluminescent crystals, casting ethereal shadows across the assembled dignitaries. Princess Annie of the Xiphran Empire stood on the elevated platform, her translucent silver skin catching the light like moonbeams on water. Her eyes, deep violet pools that held the wisdom of ancient stars, surveyed the crowd with barely concealed exhaustion. For 3 cycles, suitors from across the galaxy had arrived, each more prestigious than the last. Warrior princes with scales of gold, diplomatic heirs with minds that could calculate faster than quantum computers, wealthy merchants whose coffers could buy entire star systems. Yet Annie had refused them all. Her father, Emperor Vexer, sat on his throne with growing concern. The tradition was absolute. Annie must choose a consort before her coronation, or the throne would pass to her cousin, the ambitious and ruthless Krell. Time was running out. Princess. Her father's voice resonated through the chamber. You must choose. The coronation is in 2 days. Annie's luminescent tendrils, which grew from her head like living crown jewels, dimmed slightly, a sign of her distress. Father, I cannot bind myself to someone whose heart I cannot read. These suitors see only power, only alliance. They do not see me. At the back of the hall, almost invisible among the guards and servants, stood Massey. He was human, a species rarely seen in this quadrant of space. He had arrived on Xiphran 6 months ago as part of a diplomatic exchange program, assigned to work in the palace archives. Unlike most humans who talked incessantly, Massey was different. He was silent, observant, his dark eyes taking in everything, but his lips rarely forming words. Massey had a condition the humans called selective mutism in most social situations. Speaking felt like pushing against an invisible wall. But his silence was not emptiness. His mind was a symphony of thoughts, his observations more profound than most species' endless chatter. He had seen Princess Annie in the gardens late at night when she thought no one was watching, removing her ceremonial masks to reveal the scared young woman beneath. He had catalogued every book she borrowed from the archives, noting her fascination with ancient philosophies and poetry from 1,000 worlds. He had witnessed her kindness to the lowest servants, how she remembered their names and asked about their families. He had fallen in love with her, silently and completely, knowing the impossibility of it all. Bring forth the final candidate, the Emperor declared. A towering figure entered, Prince Thorax of the Mantoid Collective, his exoskeleton polished to mirror-like perfection. He approached Annie with calculated grace, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his kind. Princess Annie. His voice was synthesized through a translator. I offer you the might of 10,000 warships, access to the richest dilithium mines in the Spiral Arm, and an alliance that would make the Xiphran Empire unstoppable. Annie's tendrils flickered with barely restrained frustration. And what of companionship? What of understanding? What of love? Prince Thorax tilted his head, confused. Love is a chemical reaction, Princess. Power is eternal. Something inside Annie snapped. She descended from the platform, her gown of starlight trailing behind her. The crowd murmured as she walked past Prince Thorax, past the assembled nobles, past her father's shocked expression. She walked toward the back of the hall, where the shadows gathered. Where Massey stood. Every eye in the chamber followed her as she stopped before the silent human. Massey's heart hammered in his chest, his breath caught in his throat. Up close, Annie was even more beautiful and terrifying in her regal bearing. You, Annie said softly, her voice meant only for him. I have watched you in the archives. You handle our ancient texts with such reverence. You listen when others speak. You see. Massey wanted to respond, his mind screaming 1,000 things he wished to say. But his voice was locked away as always. He could only meet her eyes, hoping she could read the truth there. Annie reached out, her fingers delicate and glowing, touching his temple. In Xiphran culture, this was the deepest form of connection, a sharing of thoughts and feelings. Massey felt a warmth spread through his mind, and suddenly his thoughts were no longer trapped. Through their connection, Annie heard him. Every observation, every moment he'd noticed her, every page of poetry he'd wanted to share. She felt his love, pure and asking for nothing in return. She sensed his fear, his feeling of inadequacy. but also his strength, the strength it took to exist in a noisy universe while carrying silence. "You understand isolation," Annie whispered, still connected to his mind. "You understand what it means to be surrounded by others, yet fundamentally alone. You see people not for what they can offer, but for who they are." She turned to face the shocked assembly, her hands still touching Massey's temple, keeping their connection alive. "This one," Annie declared, her voice ringing with certainty. "This is my choice." The hall erupted in chaos. The emperor rose from his throne. Nobles shouted in protest. Prince Thorax's mandibles clacked in fury. But Annie stood firm, and through their connection, Massey felt her conviction, her certainty, her love. "He is human." Someone shouted. "He has no power, no wealth, no armies." Annie smiled, her tendrils glowing brighter than they ever had. "He has something far more precious. He has understanding. He has patience. He has a heart that sees beyond the surface of things." The emperor descended from his throne, approaching the unlikely pair. He studied Massey for a long moment, then looked at his daughter's radiant expression, the first genuine happiness he'd seen on her face. "In cycles, so be it," Emperor Vexor finally said. "Love, it seems, requires no translation." Massey felt tears stream down his face as Annie broke their connection, only to take his hand in hers, a gesture that needed no telepathy to understand. In that moment, his silence didn't matter. He had been chosen, not despite his differences, but because of the person those differences had shaped him to be. The silent human and the alien princess stood together as the galaxy looked on, proving that sometimes the most profound connections are those that transcend words entirely.